Daniel Day-Lewis is retiring from acting. His spokeswoman confirming the news, saying Daniel Day-Lewis will no longer be working as an actor. He is immensely grateful to all of his collaborators and audiences over the many years. The actor has won 3 Oscars, all for Best Actor.
Apart from being a 3-time Academy Award winner, he's also Hollywood's top ghosters. He's gotten so good at it that fans are left wondering if he's gone for good. But for the first time, Daniel Day-Lewis swore he was done with acting forever. However, the truth behind his sudden disappearance and the shocking project that finally dragged him back into the light is something you'd least expect. Let's find out. The shockwave of 2017. In June 2017, Daniel Day-Lewis's longtime publicist, Leslie Dart, released a short but unexpected statement. It bluntly stated that Daniel would no longer be working as an actor, and inside the brief message was a highly unusual clause. The text explicitly mandated that neither Day-Lewis nor his team would ever comment on the decision again. Just like that, he didn't care to give an explanation, and he banned everyone else from offering one too. Of course, you'd expect the news to shock everyone. Hollywood insiders were in total disbelief because Day-Lewis was still at the absolute peak of his career, and he was just getting the accolades he deserved and was finally a commercial success. Usually, actors step away when the good scripts dry up, not when they are guaranteed an Oscar nomination for their next project. Instead of sticking around to enjoy the praise, he immediately dropped out of sight. He completely abandoned the promotional circuit for his movie Phantom Thread, leaving director Paul Thomas Anderson standing entirely alone to answer every awkward question about where his leading man had gone. News outlets treated the situation as a final obituary for a living legend, and magazines also ran massive tribute pieces looking back at his historic run with a heavy sense of permanent loss. Because of the strict silence clause, nobody in the industry expected a trick or a sudden comeback. The curtain was down, the stage was dark, and the greatest actor alive had successfully escaped into thin air. While the world mourned the loss of a cinematic titan, nobody realized that Daniel Day-Lewis had already spent decades practicing the art of disappearing. Looking back at his career timeline, you'll notice a bizarre pattern that you just cannot ignore. Between 1997 and 2017, a 20-year span where any other actor would have cashed in on their fame, he starred in only 7 films. Most Hollywood stars sign up for multiple projects every single year to stay relevant, yet he did the exact opposite. His limited involvement in movie projects soon turned every single performance into a massive international event. Seeing his name on a movie poster invoked a kind of emotion since he was barely in any movies. But if he were in one, then you knew it was going to be a bomb. This incredibly slow pace was his only way of surviving the heavy emotional cost of fame. He disliked all the things that came with being famous, from the blinding lights on red carpets and the repetitive press interviews to the shallow nature of celebrity culture. When his peers were buying homes in the city, he chose to move to the quiet, rural hills of County Wicklow, Ireland. In this isolated haven, he found the total anonymity he craved, spending his days completely away from cameras and living as an ordinary person. For Day-Lewis, this isolation was important for his mental health. He used a specific metaphor to describe his creative process, explaining that he possessed an internal creative furnace. As a method actor, every time he took on a character, the intense acting process would completely drain that furnace, leaving it totally cold and empty. It wasn't easy for him to just get over a character from a previous movie project because he had nothing left to give. It had to take years of him living a normal everyday life to slowly rebuild that inner fire. He needed the silence of the Irish countryside to become a regular human being again, before he could even think about stepping onto a set. However, his final departure in 2017 was entirely different from his usual vacations. The fire had not only died down, this time he was burnt out. To understand why he had to run away in 2017, we have to look closely at the terrifying psychological toll of his very last character, the breaking point of Phantom Thread. For this specific project, he signed up to play Reynolds Woodcock, an obsessively controlled, deeply toxic, and emotionally unavailable dressmaker living in London during the 1950s. As a method actor, he had to get into his character and refused to fake his way through the scenes. He spent months learning how to drape, cut, and sew high-fashion garments entirely from scratch, practicing until he could replicate the work of a master tailor with his own two hands. Living inside the mind of such a cold, rigid person quickly began to alter his actual personality. As production went on, he soon became a version of himself no one could understand. It was a dark, suffocating feeling that he couldn't shake off, even when filming eventually wrapped. Usually, an actor drops the character and goes home to celebrate a job well done. But instead, Day-Lewis was trapped in the character. The intense filming process completely drained him emotionally, leaving him feeling utterly hollowed out. He realized that continuing down this path would destroy him. He later confessed to W Magazine that the urge to announce his retirement became a desperate measure to save his own mental health. According to him, he wanted to draw a line between who he was and who he was as a creative person, especially since his creative habits were making him deeply sad. He needed an official, public barrier to protect his own well-being. All he wanted was a life built around tangible, physical things, rather than the agonizing mental weight of acting. Even though it was a radical move, it fit his history perfectly. But this wasn't the first time Daniel Day-Lewis chose to stay off the grid over the glitz of an Oscar campaign. An event in 1997 made all the difference. During that year, he had finished filming a grueling sports drama called The Boxer, a role that demanded months of intense physical conditioning. Once the cameras stopped rolling, he didn't wait around for the premiere or the award nominations. He walked away from Hollywood without a single word to his agents, his managers, or his fans. He secretly relocated to Florence, Italy, where the paparazzi never thought to look. He managed to live completely under the radar in a historic city filled with tourists. Instead of relaxing in a luxury villa, he took a regular job. He became a manual apprentice under a legendary Italian cobbler named Stefano Beamer. Every day, one of the most famous actors in the world showed up to a dusty workshop, put on an apron, and learned the precise traditional art of shoemaking from scratch. This intense physical labor was sort of a cure for his mental exhaustion. Shaping shoes gave him the simple, quiet satisfaction that movie sets failed to provide. While he enjoyed his peaceful new routine, the film industry fell into a total panic. Powerful studio executives and famous directors had major movie projects ready to go, and they desperately wanted him as their leading man. They sent messages and made phone calls, yet nobody could reach the reclusive actor. He had effectively cut off all communications from the entire entertainment industry. He seemed perfectly content to spend the rest of his life making Italian footwear, completely detached from fame. It took Hollywood's most relentless director to track him down in Italy and pull him back into the set. The Scorsese intervention. Martin Scorsese was preparing to shoot his massive historical drama, Gangs of New York. The director had an absolute fixation on casting Day-Lewis as the terrifying villain, Bill the Butcher. Scorsese believed no other person on earth, apart from Day-Lewis, could play the part, so he refused to take no for an answer. Knowing a standard phone call from an agent would get rejected immediately, the director put together a special recruitment team. He enlisted Leonardo DiCaprio, who was already starring in the film, to travel with him to Florence to help convince the actor to abandon his cobbler bench. When they arrived, they faced heavy resistance. Day-Lewis was incredibly reluctant to return to the movie screen. He genuinely feared the psychological toll of a massive studio blockbuster, knowing how deeply he tended to lose himself in his work. He loved the peace of his workshop and didn't want to throw it away for the Hollywood glare. Scorsese knew that offering a massive paycheck would fail completely, so he changed his strategy. The director successfully appealed to his artistic integrity, explaining the historical importance of the story and the fascinating complexity of the character. Shocking, it worked. Day-Lewis agreed and stepped back into the spotlight right on time. His explosive comeback proved that his years away had not dulled his sharp acting instincts. His performance as Bill the Butcher received massive critical acclaim, earning him an Oscar nomination and instantly reminding the world of his unparalleled talent. He was back at the very top of the industry. However, returning to the screen meant returning to the extreme, dangerous methods that made him a legend and, quite unfortunately, a liability. For Day-Lewis, acting was never about wearing a costume or pretending. He practiced an intense style of total transformation where he stayed in character 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, throughout the entire production. This dedication frequently caused severe damage to his own body. While filming his breakout role in My Left Foot, he refused to leave his wheelchair for weeks, forcing crew members to lift him over obstacles. This constant, slouched position eventually caused him to break 2 of his ribs. Years later, on the cold set of Gangs of New York, he also refused to wear a modern, insulated winter coat because it didn't exist in the 1800s. He ended up catching a severe case of pneumonia as a result of that decision. It wasn't just the physical injuries he got. There were also psychological ones that were arguably much worse. Back in 1989, when he starred as Hamlet in a major London theatre production. During an intense performance, he suddenly claimed to hear the actual voice of his real-life deceased father speaking to him on stage. The experience terrified him so deeply that he walked off the stage mid-performance and never returned to theater acting again. To prepare for other movies, he routinely pushed his mind and body to the absolute limit. For The Last of the Mohicans, he chose to live completely alone in the rugged American wilderness for months. He learned how to survive off the land, building his own canoes, throwing tomahawks, and tracking down wild animals to skin them for food. This total isolation made his performances hauntingly realistic, even while it created a very awkward environment for everyone else on the movie sets. Co-stars and crew members often felt deeply uncomfortable around him because they never actually met the real Daniel Day-Lewis. They had to address him by his character's name even when the cameras were turned off. People on set walked on eggshells, unsure of how to interact with a man who had completely wiped away his true identity. This terrifying level of commitment resulted in an unmatched streak that was definitely Academy recognition worthy. The historic three-peat. His journey into the record books began in 1989 when he took home his very first Best Actor statue for playing Christy Brown in My Left Foot. Not only was it an incredible performance, it immediately established him as a major critical heavyweight in Hollywood. Nearly 20 years later, he reached a new peak with an unforgettable performance as the greedy oil tycoon Daniel Plainview in the drama There Will Be Blood. This character became an instant cultural phenomenon, securing his second Oscar. It'll be insane not to mention his intense delivery of famous lines that entered pop culture history, making him a household name for a completely new generation of movie fanatics who had never seen his earlier work. The ultimate climax of his career arrived with an unbelievable presidential transformation. When Steven Spielberg hired him to play Abraham Lincoln, Day-Lewis did not simply memorize lines. He literally lived as the 16th president for an entire year before filming even started. He spoke in a high-pitched historical voice to everyone on set, and he even signed his personal text messages to co-stars as A. Lincoln. This total devotion led to his third historic win at the Oscars. With that specific victory, he officially became the only actor in Hollywood history to win 3 Best Actor Academy Awards, a historic record that remains completely unbroken. This peerless streak created an elite status, and it came with a prize. The massive critical success generated an unbearable amount of pressure for every single project that followed. He felt an intense need to match his own impossible standards with every new script, making the creative process an agonizing experience. The burden of being a living legend became too heavy to carry. With nothing left to prove and his mental health at risk, his 2017 disappearance felt permanent until the family dynamic changed. From late 2017 to early 2024, the actor went into a phase of total blackout. He completely avoided Hollywood industry events, skipping every major award show, star-studded premiere, and red carpet. It was so bad that a whole new generation of movie fans grew up without ever seeing him promote a project. The public only caught rare glimpses of his new life through occasional viral paparazzi photos. These snapshots became massive internet events because they looked so incredibly ordinary. Away from the flashing cameras, he spent his time focusing on private creative outlets. He occupied his days writing, drawing, and engaging in physical craftsmanship, using traditional tools to build things by hand. This peaceful routine kept his mind focused, yet his total silence triggered a wild rumor online. Because his team refused to give updates, entertainment blogs filled the internet with endless false reports. Some websites claimed he was dealing with a secret health crisis, while others insisted he had abandoned society forever. Day-Lewis ignored the gossip, refusing to give the media any attention. During those 7 silent years, the entire movie business changed dramatically. Hollywood shifted its focus towards streaming platforms and massive cinematic projects. The intense character dives that made him famous suddenly looked like a bygone era of filmmaking. It seemed highly unlikely that he would ever return to a corporate entertainment world that felt so different from his artistic roots. However, behind closed doors, a new creative spark was quietly developing within his own household. The father-son collaboration. This fresh energy came from his son, Ronan Day-Lewis. Ronan was already an accomplished painter and filmmaker who was preparing to make his feature directorial debut. During Daniel's long absence from the spotlight, the father and son spent hours talking and working together in private. They eventually co-wrote a deeply personal screenplay. Daniel later confessed that he felt a heavy residual sadness watching his son prepare to make films while he walked away from the cinematic world. Collaborating with Ronan changed everything. The legendary actor explained that working side by side with his son completely reignited the creative furnace within him that had gone totally cold. To protect this fragile new spark, they designed the project to be small and intimate. They intentionally bypassed the massive, exhausting infrastructure of typical Hollywood productions, keeping the process strictly focused on the art. This secret collaboration culminated in an announcement that completely broke the internet. The global film community was shocked when Focus Features and Plan B dropped a massive bombshell by revealing the movie, titled Anemone. The premise of the film was set in northern England, exploring the dark and complex legacies that exist between family, fathers, and sons. Audiences were thrilled to learn that a star-studded ensemble joined the cast, including brilliant performers such as Sean Bean, Samantha Morton, and Samuel Bottomley. Yet, the biggest talking point was the incredible irony of the specific character Day-Lewis chose to portray. The 3-time Oscar winner agreed to play an estranged, reclusive hermit brother. It was a role that perfectly mirrored his actual real-life isolation from the public eye. The highly anticipated project scheduled its launch in select theaters on October 3, 2025, before expanding nationwide to massive audiences. Moviegoers could hardly believe that the greatest ghost in Hollywood was officially back on the big screen. With his return official, Day-Lewis finally broke his silence on his infamous retirement statement, and he didn't hold back. The future of a legend. Ahead of the movie's highly anticipated world premiere at the New York Film Festival, the elusive star sat down for a monumental, candid interview with Rolling Stone magazine. He shocked the entertainment industry by sharing his deep regrets about the dramatic exit announcement. He bluntly admitted that he would have done well to just keep his mouth shut for sure. He completely exploded the myth of his departure by labeling his 2017 retirement statement as such grandiose gibberish to talk about. The legendary performer clarified his true intentions, explaining that he never actually intended to retire from the craft. He merely needed to pause one type of intense work so he could freely explore other creative outlets. He also faced a major dilemma regarding his personal pride. Day-Lewis realized that letting stubborn pride stop him from collaborating with his son would be a terrible mistake, one far worse than breaking an old retirement vow. Now that the illusion of his retirement is completely shattered, what does the future hold for cinema's greatest actor? This stunning comeback opens up an exciting new chapter, leaving fans to wonder whether this film is a one-time family favor or the true beginning of a massive late-career renaissance. This unique father and son partnership might also signal a healthy shift in his famous acting method. Working closely with his own family could allow him to dive into characters without pushing his mind to the absolute brink of psychological collapse. Movie critics and modern audiences have enthusiastically embraced his sudden return, proving that his legendary star power is completely timeless. The ultimate lesson of his incredible journey is that true artists never really quit. They simply need time to experience a regular life before they can find the fuel to create magic on screen again. Do you think Daniel Day-Lewis will win a 4th Oscar for Anemone? Let us know your thoughts below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. Thanks for watching.